Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining and taking up a bit of your lunchtime to listen to us. So I hope everyone's got something nice to eat, and people are sort of trickling in at the moment. So what I will do is I will move on to our next slide, and I will start introducing our speaker today. So our special guest star is Anne Keogh, who is Head of External Relations at Siemens. Now, Siemens doesn't really need much introduction. It's a global household name brand that has operations in everything from industry to healthcare to mobility, and it's known across the globe. Anne has been working in public relations in both in-house and consultancy and agencies. So she's got a great perspective all around, and we're really pleased to have her today. And she's been fighting the good fight at Siemens for nearly 2 decades now. So she's seen a lot of change, but she's also seen a lot of successes as well. So welcome, Anne.
Thank you, Sam. It's a delight to be here, and welcome everybody.
And then myself, so I'm the VP of Customer Experience at the sort of newly formed Onclusive Group. So Onclusive is made up of some organizations you might know a little bit better. So Kantar in Europe, so fantastic media monitoring and evaluation. Also Legacy Onclusive in the US, who's sort of PR, data analytics and PR tech. And also ourselves. I used to be the former CEO of PR Glue, so we provide PR and workflow tools and newsrooms and data. And then also recently acquired Critical Mention, who are a fantastic provider of broadcast monitoring in the US. So together, we hope to provide a complete suite for PR and comms people. But that's enough about us. Let's move on to what we're going to talk about today. So today's focus really is about how to identify the most impactful authors and outlets for your brand. And we're going to share some best practices. Well, Anne's going to share some best practices for crafting and packaging a compelling pitch. And then we're going to talk a bit about how to measure your success, optimize your strategies, and nurture your relationships in the long term, and how data and technology can help. And then we'll have a good space for Q&A because we get really bored of our own voices and we really want to hear from you. And if any technology goes wrong throughout this, I just want to say I'm good at PR technology, but not at any kind of presentation technology. But we'll get through it. So I'm going to kick off with a stat, and there won't be too many of these stats in the presentation. So the stat here that I'm going to talk about is that fewer than 8% of pitches result in a published article. And it takes about 30 pitches to a journalist to result in a response. This is an average, it differs, but what it shows is that it's a really hard job to get your story to the right journalists and to get them to talk about it. And there's a bit of background for this. Onclusive actually did a report into sort of global journalism. And what it did was it took a year-on-year period and it compared sort of the outlets and the output from those outlets in that time period. And what they found was that in that time period, 16% more media properties just exploded, right? They just appeared overnight. And there was an increase around about 40 million articles. So a huge amount more content being created year on year. Per publication, the articles actually themselves increased by 28%. So again, more and more publications needing to do more and more. And this is the big one. The articles per journalist increased by 78% within this time period. And interestingly, the articles that were then sort of driving this increase were not from the tier 1 and the tier 2 publications that might be known to everyone on this call, but from tier 3 publications. So niche publications based on subjects or points of view or regions or industries. So really what this sort of shows is that, one, there's a hell of a lot more content that's out there. And two, there's an awful lot of overworked journalists. So key to all of this and setting the context is how does the PR industry get through that clutter, that noise, and how can it make the lives of these overworked journalists easier to help them carry your message to the wider audiences. And this is where we're going to kick off with, okay? And I'll stop talking in a second and let Anne get in there and share her experience with us. But this slide says that building the perfect pitch starts with the right data. Now, I think probably that most people on this call would not see themselves as data scientists or statisticians. I would hope that most people on this call would see themselves as storytellers and people who love the written word and the spoken word and know the beauty of language. Because you'd like to think that this would all start with the perfect piece of content, beautifully crafted and well thought out and engaging. But as we all know, it doesn't matter how beautiful your pitch may be, if it falls on deaf ears, it falls on deaf ears. So we feel that actually this starts with the right data, the right people, the right audiences, the right outlets, and knowing who those people are will help you both craft your pitch and get it through to people, which may then end up as an article as opposed to end up in the junk box. And then we believe it ends with the right measurement. So the measurement is how you're going to see whether or not this tactic worked, if it was successful, how you can do things better the next time. So at this point, and we feel that technology can really help with this. Technology can't help with the writing, but technology can help with identifying the data and helping you with the measurement. So hopefully that will save you enough time to do the things that everyone on this call is great at. But I'll shush now, and I'm going to hand over to Anne, because what I'd like to know, Anne, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. You know, you've worked in the industry for many years. How's media relations and pitch building changed with the use of data and technology?
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, and funny enough, actually, we have had some attempt at AI trying to help us with the writing, and I'm probably a bit of a dinosaur on this one. I do prefer the human intervention up front, but anyway. But really, in answer to your question, in some ways the fundamentals haven't changed that much, but the speed has increased, and so has the scope. And I think from the PR team's perspective, we'd love to do more, but we're struggling to have the bandwidth to do what we want. You know, all the housekeeping, the creating the target media list, pitching lists, doing the appropriate research, being as thoughtful as we could be. We find we're being stretched at both ends. So it's got to the point where we need to use the intelligence from tools like Onclusive, and it's time to sharpen our swords. At Siemens, we do use data and technology for communications, and it's been essential. The right data helps us understand who's writing what, where those articles are being published, and we can collect information on target journalists. And then PR technology helps us pinpoint which information is relevant, measuring results, and even revealing untapped opportunities. So where a journalist is writing relevant stories, but not yet writing about us. So we can focus in on them. And technology allows us to automate some of the day-to-day tactical work, so that we can hopefully focus more on the storytelling that you talked about and the relationship building and developing future strategies.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. And I said we were going to spend a lot of time hearing from the audience. So we've got a little short poll we'd love everyone to participate in. So it's essentially a simple question. How do you identify which journalists to pitch to? So I think, is that coming up on people's screens now, or do I have to press a button?
That's up on people's screens.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Whilst you're doing that, I'm going to be looking at the picture of people having lunch and thinking how I should have eaten before this conversation. Right. So hopefully everyone's had a chance to put their thoughts down on the poll. So I thought what we could do is move into tips for identifying authors and outlets. So based on what Anne was saying there, oops, I knew technology would go wrong. I think I have to share my screen again, don't I?
Yeah, you only
just
show
do
screen.
this. So there we are. Okay, are we back on track? Can you see my screen?
No, we're still on. Yeah, there we go. Spot on.
Wonderful. Okay. So, okay, so unless you're one of the lucky few where you've got journalists waiting for you to produce content so they can write about it. So if you're the likes of, I don't know, Liverpool Football Club or the Treasury, and you've got everyone just waiting to write about you, you're probably one of the rest, like the rest of us, who have to work hard for their coverage. So over the years, you know, we've been worked with hundreds of PR professionals, and here are some of the tips that they've shared with us about identifying authors and outlets. So, you know, some simple things like who's currently writing about you and who is writing about your competitors. As Anne was saying, you know, if they're writing about you or your competitors and you're not engaging with them, why not? They're already interested in this area. So finding tools to help you identify those is a great boon. Who's requesting help with writing articles on the topic that you're writing about? So you can see on social media, you know, journal requests, things of this nature. What are the journalists who are in this sector posting on social media and so forth? You can even identify who's been writing positively or negatively about a given issue, which is again another great data point. Maybe you're trying to put forward an alternative point of view than the traditional narrative. So it's interesting to find out people who might be receptive to that point of view. Which journalists have a good social amplification? So once you find the journalists, how well will they be able to carry your story to a wider audience? Which outlets have a good domain authority? So this is used by marketeers to determine which sort of websites and online publications have a really good respect in the industry, with lots of people linking to them. So therefore getting your story in these outlets might result in your story being carried further and wider. And don't forget who your team have been interacting with, you know, at events or over the phone or on emails. If you've got somewhere to keep this information and understand how well you're engaging with journalists, that can be another great source of identifying people to pitch your story to. And also, you know, what social media influencers are talking about this issue and how are they talking about it and how are your journalists talking about it? Because that feeds in not only to who you can identify as being someone you should approach, but also how you should approach it. What's the tone of voice? So, but again, I want to stop talking. So essentially what we're saying is, you know, you've got to think laterally to find the best people and publications to enable you to carry your message. But Anne, let's go back to you. How do you find the right journalists and publications? How do you engage them? How do you grab their attention?
Yeah, well, it's about being relevant and timely, not wasting their time, and also not being too overt and too salesy. A key challenge for us at Siemens is that we're proactively trying to shift perception of us as a traditional engineering company. You talked about all those lovely areas that we worked in before, to what we actually are, which is a tech company. And you might be surprised to hear that there are more software developers at Siemens than at Microsoft. So we need to talk in a different way to a much broader group of target media. And we actually work with Kantar Kantar Intelligent Reputation, who are now part of Onclusive as well, the research arm, at a global and a regional level to identify the need for that shift. And we're now doing that, and something that I felt like last week, but it's actually the week before, we were at Transform 2022 in Manchester, really sort of at a big event, just trying to put all that together and talk about it with our target audiences, including journalists. So, but while we're typically performing well against our traditional competitors, which came out from the research like GE, it was clear that we had a lot more to do comparing ourselves to IBM and Microsoft, and that's what we've actively been trying to do in recent months. So earning attention as opposed to grabbing it temporarily is by definition a long-term strategy. Simply put, it's about consistently giving your target journalists what they need, and in the simplest and most concise, digestible way to make their jobs easier. We do the research on what they care about and what matters to them, what they've recently published, and then pitch stories that should appeal to them. That's the way we try and approach it.
Brilliant. And then, you know, from that, then access to kind of a fresh database has got to be a must, because if you're doing all of that research on information that's 3 months old, then again all of that hard work is for naught. So I think, you know, for us, and I think hopefully for everyone on this call, it's not sort of about the size of your list, it's about the quality of the data, and it's about having the tools as well to help you build those long-term relationships, so that you can make sure that you've got a warm reception for your pitches. And what recommendations would you give to someone who's looking for like a technology solution around this area?
Well, when you're looking for a media database solution, you should evaluate how it's being kept up to date. I mean, in addition to applying cutting edge artificial intelligence, the best databases are curated by human beings and verified by human beings. You know, it's a bit like the writing. Also, it's vital to make sure that your database is compliant with privacy laws, and it kind of goes without saying, stuff like GDPR. And the days of being able to squirrel away comments and contacts in little black books are really, you know, they really have gone. So the Onclusive Media Database, which is the one we use, has really helped us, and we're confident it's a crucial part of our PR toolbox.
Wonderful. Okay, so poll results. Okay, now this is where the technology, I'm sure, is going to let us down. Where do we see these poll results, Charlotte?
I will just let you know. So we have a whopping 75% of you. You've identified journalists that have written the most about your industry or your subject matter. That's followed by 9%. They've written about your company or your competitors. 7% rely on your agency, or you have no real methodology, and 2% they have the most social media influence.
Okay, so that's so overwhelmingly then we are talking about people who are already writing about this sort of subject area, and it would actually be really interesting to deep dive into that to see if that if people find that often produces the usual suspects, or if it provides them with the you know, I think what did you call it, Anne, the hidden opportunities? Or
yeah, no, exactly. And no, it is we've probably just got a really sort of good, diligent group of people here who are doing a great job. But yeah, I'm quite interested in the I suppose that it's quite low figures of people who rely on their agencies, and I'm surprised by that, actually, because I think a lot of people do rely on agencies. They find, certainly in-house people like me, it's very hard to do that. I think it's fun stuff, keeping those personal relationships up to date and alive and nurtured, and we do rely a lot on our agencies to bring some of those sort of ready, sort of, you can't say oven ready anymore because it's too Boris Johnson, is it? But those kind of, you know, those sort of good relationships to the table, and so we can jump on them. So I'm surprised. I think a lot of people do rely quite heavily on their agencies and partners, but that's not what this poll is showing.
No, well, I think what we have here is a damn proactive group of people who are really caring about who've either not got the budget for a PR agency, or who are taking a very active interest in it. So that's great.
Well, good, okay. Good, and so these tools should really help, because it cuts down a lot of I mean, all of us in PR, it's always admin heavy. It doesn't matter what dizzy height you get to or how many decades you've been doing it. We've still got to do, you know, hew the wet stuff, and you know, I think that's why these tools are really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. People are a pain. They just don't stay still, right? You should just be able to see, you know, one place where they all are. So that's what we're hopefully trying to get to. Okay, so let's move a little bit on now. So we've talked about how we identify the audiences and how we can find the right people. Let's talk a little bit more about what creates a compelling pitch. And here, you know, what we're talking about in terms of, you know, what we said before is the data and the technology can help you facilitate and cut down the amount of admin that goes on, so that you can spend the time on nurturing those relationships and also, you know, crafting something compelling. So at this point, what I really love to do is to pass on to Anne again, to explain to us what she's what she's found that's worked and what doesn't work in her time and tenure in Siemens. So Anne, lay it out for us.
Yeah, no, certainly, I'd love to share that with you. So I'm trying not to, because as soon as you say what doesn't work, I immediately think of lots of examples of that. So I'll try and start positively. So I think, first of all, a great headline is a must. And journalists are very busy people, as we all know, and you only have a few seconds to generate excitement and to be something that be enticing enough with your email subject line. I mean, I think that's even as how basic it is to get it into that, to make them want to open your email and jump into the content, and then to get straight to the point in your pitch. So ask yourself, why would somebody want to find out more about this topic, and then answer that question in your intro. So really sort of quite brutal, really, in terms of copywriting. And another tip is really about that the story shouldn't be about you, and sometimes that's difficult. We've got internal clients, or if you've got, you know, your client, whatever our clients are, it shouldn't be about them. It should be about the people that resonates with the, you know, the journalist's audience. So it's got to really clearly explain the benefits to that audience, and that needs to come out fairly upfront. And then to make sure that your pitch is timely, obviously always a good idea to try and connect it to current issues or events such as recent news or stats, or a new element to a story that the journalist has recently covered. As the poll came out, that people are watching that. It does take a bit of time to personalize your pitch. You are writing to real people, so try and cultivate a connection. It's not just about using their name. You need to try and, you know, incorporate your insights and what you know about them, or how your pitch will fit into their overall subject matter and style, and why you want to work with them. So it does take a bit more time, but I found it's really worth it in the long term. And then packaging, well, quick and easy to read is ideal. Highlight the key points so they don't have to dig around for them. I find this particularly in financial press releases, which actually I don't have to deal with it because it's done by my global team. But I mean, I really have to really dig around to find out what the key points are. They can be quite obtuse, but I do find that the Onclusive newsroom is really effective as a resource for us, because it means we can put lots of different things on there, like, you know, stats and infographics and pictures. So that, I mean, I did a recent release, and it had several universities in it, but we could put all the different pictures in, and then the journalists can pick the ones that are most relevant to them, and that's a really useful resource.
Fantastic. And actually, sorry, I know, I just want to pick up on one thing you said there, because it was very interesting. So you said something about we all have internal clients who maybe want to make the story more about you than about the sort of the audience and the journalist. How do you navigate that then? Do you just sort of,
yeah,
how do you make sure that yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah. Yes, well, trial and error is the classic way, but yeah, I obviously try and, you know, explain to them how it all works. We do have I'm pretty good at media training most of our people, but yeah, just trying to explain to them that it's not a. It's funny, a lot of people maybe think that getting the press release out is the end of the process, when actually we know it's the beginning of the next process. So it's not the end of the process, it's actually an invitation to come and talk to us about a story that is of interest. And sometimes when you say that to perhaps a salesperson or somebody who is quite process driven, that suddenly the penny drops and they go, oh yes, okay, I understand that. I'll let you advise me. So
no, that's really great. That's actually, you know, that's a lovely insight. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that. And now, as we're talking about success and nurturing relationships, you know, so the press release, look at how we segued brilliantly. It's amazing.
Hot off the press. And I'm very proud, because actually it does show how this. So this is our Siemens, an example from our Siemens UK press site, run for us by Onclusive. It's really media rich content hub. So it's siemens.co.uk/news will get you there. or press. It's all very clever. You know, I really do love it. It just ensures that we can get everything in one place. As I said earlier, really, you know, pictures, all the rest of it, and obviously just to be clear, to make sure that if you do have research and stuff like that, to make sure that you do acknowledge sources like photo credits and data sources and stuff like that. Is always helpful, but it's so much easier for journalists to just get a link to a story on our site rather than us clogging up their emails with lots of attachments and them coming back saying, oh no, we want it portrait or landscape and it's not high res enough or whatever it is. But also the real pearl of this site for me is it's so easy to use. So I can do it, even though I'm a bit of a dinosaur. I'm not. I've got some tech natives who work in my team, and they're brilliant. I can do this. So if something changes in the middle of the night, at the weekend, I don't have to wake somebody up from the website team and get them to help me. I can just do it myself. It's that easy. So I really do love it. But yeah, this is all the news from Transform that we've had over July. Busy July.
Oh, fantastic. And it goes to your point about the amount of admin, you know, no matter how high up in the ranks you get, the amount of admin you have to deal with. So hopefully as well, having one place where you've got your media contacts, can power your newsroom, can see your coverage, can, you know, find the right people to speak to. Hopefully that's just a fewer passwords that we all have to remember, which is a good thing, a very good thing. Great, so let's move on then to how measuring success and optimizing your strategy, because I do want to make sure we have some time for Q&A as well. So I guess sort of tracking pitch effectiveness and journalist engagement, you know, there's a number of ways you can do it. The end goal is to just work out, you know, did it get through to the journalists? How is it landing with them? Okay, and how are they engaging with it? And then beyond just being able to adjust your strategy, this step is kind of crucial for reporting back to the business and, you know, ultimately proving your value and showing that you know what you talk about. So, you know, for example, there are tools out there like, you know, within All-Inclusive, you can automatically link the coverage that you get with the press release that generated it. So you can kind of complete that loop. So you can see, here's the story, here's who's opened it, here's what the coverage it's generated. You know, look at the amount of hard work that we did and how it sort of improved. You can also see how many people subsequently sort of made inquiries off the back of that communication. And again, you can use that to feed into your reporting. But as is my common theme, Anne, I would prefer to hear from you, and I'm sure all of our team would prefer to hear from you than from me. So what do you find most important about tracking your pitch effectiveness and your journalistic engagement, and how do you go about it?
No, sure, absolutely. Well, given that most journalists react to a pitch within a few hours of it being sent, the high-level data like email clicks on its own is quite valuable. So not only have we've been able to make timely adjustments, but we can also use this information to evaluate the effectiveness of our lists and to determine whether the list hygiene is in order. And the bottom line is that we've stopped guessing what to do and started using real-time data and feedback from our audience to make our campaign perform better. For example, we've got an ongoing campaign. It's still ongoing. Which we're having to adjust as we go through. It's all about using cost-effective artificial intelligence to help water companies, who are the big baddies in this story, to anticipate where the next leak in their creaking Victorian pipework is going to occur. And their argument is that they need to put massive investment into changing all the the infrastructure, and that gives them time. But our solution is very cost-effective AI solution, which gives them time to get their engineers out to prevent the sewage spills going into our rivers and seas, which none of us are happy about. It's very topical, and the water companies are getting a lot of flack for these spills, quite rightly, I'm afraid. And it's easy for journalists to write a sort of big bad water company story, but what we're looking for are those journalists who have the interest to look into the tech solution and highlight it.
Perfect. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And I love hearing kind of real examples, because quite often, you sort of have theoretical reasons, theoretical scenarios, but having real examples is perfect. It really brings that to life. Okay, so listen, we're going to finish off then a little bit with talking about nurturing those relationships in order to get more media placement. So we've talked about identifying them. We've talked about how you can craft the message and get that out to them, you know, email, newsrooms, social media, things like that. Now we're going to talk about how we nurture those relationships further. And this one for me, I will just take one moment, because this I find very interesting. Technology has helped so many different departments within an organization, right? So anyone who wants to build and nurture relationships, if they're a salesperson, they have Salesforce. If they are in account management, they have their own CRMs. There's tools out there for people, but quite often I find that PR professionals are left with spreadsheets or shared inboxes, and you know, it's not as if it's a slow-paced environment, PR. So it's interesting to me that very few people have the technology and tools to help them, you know, automate all of the interactions that they've been having with journalists in multiple different channels and so forth. So that for me that's quite interesting. But once you have something in place that helps you, you know, keep track of those relationships, then when you have your unique data, when you have that information that allows you to be that subject matter expert, you can then use this nurturing that you've done to hopefully improve the chances of your pitch landing. So you've got the great content, you've got the relationships, and then what we're hoping is that will allow you to cultivate sort of the respect, the trust, the consistency, and also with systems that can help you keep that information up to date as well. As I said, it's all about removing the admin and trying to allow the teams that use these types of systems to get on with what they're really good at, you know, with building the relationships and so on. And otherwise, you're wasting a huge amount of really valuable time. But what are your thoughts on what I've just said?
No, well, that's it. And to be honest, it is something that's a work in progress for us. And I was talking about Transform and how our objective is to move from this perception of us as an engineering company to being a tech company, and that's very much what we're in the middle of right now. And so I'm really looking forward to working with Onclusive CRM for PR to access all our contacts and do the campaign tracking and correspondence with journalists across our team. You know, with all that information literally at our fingertips, we'll be able to see and report on which journalists are getting back to us, how they've engaged with us, what we need to do next with each of those relationships. It's really exciting time to be working in this way. So, but I'm not at the stage where I can say, "Da-da, it's done." It's very much we're at the beginning of that process. So that's why I'm so excited to have it all together, because we've previously worked with Kantar Research, as I said. We've also had our clippings from Kantar and previous other clippings agencies in the past, and I've worked with you and PR Glue specifically on this sort of intelligent sort of press site. So to have it all together in one space, and then you've got new stuff coming in all the time, is really exciting. So I'm happy to be guinea pig. Try anything out on me, I'll have a go.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Okay, so now what we'd really love to do is we would love to hear questions. So please, I think that the chat should be open for any questions that you have. Again, my technology is such that I can't actually see them. So Charlotte, do we have any questions in the chat box?
Yeah, I can start with the first question. So is there the best day of the week or time of day for sending a pitch to journalists to get the most response?
Well, anecdotally, it's supposed to not be Friday afternoon, and certainly we would advise against that. But I think there is some data around this, and I think it's that early morning, sort of, not too early, by the way. I think it is sort of 9 till 1 o'clock in the morning on the weekdays, that most people open. I guess they're doing a scan before before they get stuck into what they're going to prioritize for the days ahead. It does depend, obviously, whether you're a national daily or if you're a trade, what kind of journalist you are. But yeah, I think that sort of 9 till 1 o'clock is the best practice time to get something in the inbox.
Yeah, it's that content generation time, isn't it? It's the horizon scanning. What's coming up? What are we going to plan for the day? What are we going to allocate to people? So yes.
Yeah, I'm always really careful not to put things out on Friday in case they think that we're trying to hide it. So it's that sort of stigma about trying to bury bad news or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's probably just me being silly. I don't know.
Cool.
Okay,
Hopefully that helps.
Amy, sorry. Amy asks, is follow-up necessary or advised, or is it considered badgering?
That is a really good question, and I know a lot of particularly PR agencies are put under pressure to follow up on emails or pitches to journalists, and it is difficult. It's I think it is okay to follow up because they might have just had a busy day and not responded, but it is annoying if they get the calls coming in saying, did you get my email? Yes, I deleted it, or yes, I got it and I didn't think it was interesting. So you've got to find a balance, and it is really hard. But I think a gentle follow up just to check is okay, because I know what I'm like with my inbox. Sometimes it's a busy day and you haven't got to everything, but don't push it too much.
Well, I mean, one of the things that you can also potentially do is if you can see from the distribution system that you use, if you can see who's opened it. It could be so someone's opened it but nothing's happened. You might want to use some of that information to tailor who you follow up with, and also if I would say that if it was a very busy news day, or you're talking to someone that's in the nationals as opposed to maybe some of the smaller publications that might be scrabbling around for a bit more content, we do get some, well, you've all probably had the experiences of that leading to a grumpy response. So if there is any way that you could use data to help inform that follow-up process, to maybe limit the amount of time that you have to waste, maybe possibly fall on slightly less deaf ears, then that might be something that could help as well.
Yeah, and I would always say, even if they haven't responded to you, the fact that if you've sent it and you know it's a good story, you're confident that it was a good story, it was relevant, it might have still lodged in some way. So the next time that you try and engage with them, they'll, oh yeah, they sent me something about this before. So don't lose heart. I think sometimes it's more of an internal sort of expectations management job to say, look, this thing takes time. Go back to what Sam said at the beginning about 8%. It's a tough job.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Patrick asks, in terms of pitch presentation, are there any suggestions around sentence case or title case in subject to avoid spam filters? There's always rumours going around in his workplace on what does or does not work.
Traditionally, so every spam filter will be configured slightly differently, but certainly our advice to our customers that are creating press releases through the platform is to use oh God, I've got it the wrong way around. Not all uppercase. What is that? Title case. So first letter capitalized, but not the entire word being capitalized. So because there is evidence to show that some shouty emails trigger mild spam filters. You should also try to make sure that when you're sending out your press releases, that you do give your journalists the ability to unsubscribe from them, and that if you are sending by email, it should be really well formed, with not like loads of complex click tracking, because again, those also trigger spam filters. And try to avoid things like in the headline like free or anything too commercial, because that will tend to be either put into clutter or to, sometimes it will trigger some spam filters as well. We had there's some very useful tools out there that you can do you can send your email to them and it will come up and it'll give you like a hygiene score, and we can add that in the we use it in this platform, but you can also use it externally, so you can send it and it will give you your spamminess or deliverability score. So we always check ours to make sure they're 10 out of 10 in terms of deliverability, but it's a useful tool to check.
Yeah, no, I'd absolutely agree with that. So definitely I wouldn't have caps in the headline. And even I try not to do like bullet points and things like that I know sometimes I cave into that, but just to try and make it as natural as possible. And obviously if there is a risk that people get stuff that looks like it's an HTML and therefore they just think, oh, I'll delete it. But you can usually get across that with your fabulous headline in the subject line and your personalization. But if that is an issue for you, you can just send an email and a link to your site, and then that gets over all of that.
Yeah, I mean, what we would say is be careful of the headline. So title case, not all uppercase. Don't use words that would tend to be associated with marketing campaigns or sales campaigns. So freeze and things that anything like that. We also say the size of the email is really important. So press releases sent from PR Glue, they have they'll show the images that you attach, but they're not actually attachments. So it's not a large file size that will block up someone's email or trigger kind of alerts. And then as Anne said, make it sound natural, make it easy, pleasant on the eye, shall we say, but not going over into the world of marketing communications, because no one, journalists do not like to, as you said before, Anne, they don't like to be felt like they're being sold to. They are above that. So there we go. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, great. So you mentioned attachments. So we have a question. Within pitches, would you include press releases in the body copy or incorporate as attachments in your pitch?
The feedback I get, right, is that whichever way you do it, provided it's easy for the journalist to use. So, for example, if you send a PDF, it's very difficult to copy and from a PDF. It's just another step. Or if you make people go to a site like where they have to go through a process to download the images, or it's whatever you feel is. If we think about the overstretched journalists, they're producing 78% more content. You want that email to be a simple, open copy. I see what it's talking about. Grab that, download that, get on the phone to that person, that PR person, to ask more questions. Done, kind of thing. So whichever style you want to use, as long as you make sure that everything there is just super easy. Test it out yourself. Could you get the information that you needed within a couple of clicks, or would it be something that someone would go, oh Christ, I'll deal with that later, I don't have time to download that or fiddle about with that now? That would be my litmus test. Anne, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think this is, I love pictures and charts and stuff, like that. I think journalists do as well. And what's nice is on the Onclusive site, you can just have a selection of photos, a different, so portrait, landscape, and then they can pick the one that suits them. And also it means that they don't feel that they're going to be running the same picture as everyone else. So they'll choose something that suits. So in this universities release that we put out last week, it was about 7 universities that we're working strategically with in the UK. But obviously the ones from Oxford are going to use the Oxford pictures, the Cambridge are going to use Cambridge, Manchester, they'll pick their local one, or if there's a good just overall one that they like the look of, they can do it. So you don't feel you don't have to bombard them with all those attachments because they're there. But they've got that choice. So it's really good. The other thing I would say, which is quite helpful on pictures, is if there is a copyright credit to be made, just to put it in the title of the picture, so that it automatically, you know, they can't say they haven't got it. And they're happy to credit people, but they don't. It's a faff, isn't it, if they have to ask you? So just if you make it as part of the title, it makes it really easy.
Yeah, and for those of you sort of just to picture this, so what Anne is talking about here is the press release is sent via this particular platform. They're very visual looking, so they've got all the information that you need, contact information, images displayed in line, but not actually attachments, so it's not a heavy file size, and it's just like a one click to either download the image, or very simple to copy and paste the text. So just to clarify, and one thing I would say is that one of our customers, I think the first time they used the platform, they said, "Oh my God, we've got all this national coverage. Your system's brilliant." And I was like, "Well, actually, it was your pictures that were brilliant. That's what really sold it. Was they sent out this release with some really unique, engaging imagery, and that's what got them all the coverage. Our system just provided an easy way of getting that information to the journalists. So it was." Of course, I didn't mind taking the praise, but I did point out it was their great image.
That's great, thank you. That's the end of the questions, so thank you everyone for sending those in.
Wonderful. Well, we've actually taken up the majority of your lunchtime, so I'm so very grateful for people staying and listening and asking their questions. I believe we'll be sending a copy of this around to all the attendees, and we can include some information on those that email checker as well, if people are interested in that too. But I just want to say thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you to Anne so much for providing her insights, and thank you to Charlotte for making this actually pretty damn tech issue free. So yeah, so I hope everyone has a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you.